sex war. War between the sexes. I want you to come with me on a journey into the past. Let's get in our time machines and go way, way back into the past. So far back into the past you cannot even begin to conceive beyond our normal understanding of what numbers are. A really long way back. And we go, yeah, that's right, to another galaxy far, far away. And what we find is we find two races of beings. For the sake of simplicity in this film, I'm going to call them the Orions and the Sirians. Now the Orions are males and the Sirians are females. That's right. The men and the women are different races of beings from different star systems. And they've been at war for a long time. And eventually, which usually happens with war, somebody wins and somebody loses. In this case, that's right, yes, the women won. And if you think about it, it really is, of course, isn't it? So the women won the war between the sexes, between the men and the women, long, long ago in a galaxy far away. So what I'm inviting you to do, as I am with every single film I ever put out, I'm inviting you to suspend your disbelief. Just the duration of this film, just come along this little journey with me. Let's play with these ideas and see where it takes us. Well, because the women were the victors, they dictated the terms of the cessation of hostilities. And this is what they dictated to the men. They told the men, you can no longer reproduce, because in those days the men reproduced in their worlds and the females reproduced in theirs. But that was all finished. The women took control of reproduction, and the men felt this to be a really punitive action. They felt really seriously screwed up by this. No longer could they produce their own offspring. It was actually delegated to the winners, as it is in this particular conflict. And so the women victors took charge in the home planets of the men and controlled reproduction. Now this all happened a very long time ago indeed, and you might say, well, what's that got to do with us? And then here's the funny thing. War between the sexes, have you heard that expression before? Yes, I think you have, haven't you? I'm sure you have. And have you ever heard this expression? All's fair in love and war. That's something to conjure with as well, isn't it? So, let me take you through the time to a different point. And this is a point when the Creator, the one that gave us all life, was curious to explore further their interactions between the men and the women. Different races, different planets, different star systems, if you remember. And so what was decided is that there would be an experiment which would take place upon one lonely, isolated planet, and that these two beings that had been at war for so long would actually be brought together on the same planet so that they could work out their differences. And huge surprise here, the name of the planet is Earth, that's it. Yes. And so men and women, human beings, were seeded onto this planet. So right from the word go, there was an experiment in operation, and the question that the Creator was asking is, let us see what we can do with men and women on the same planet, forming different genders of the same species, i.e. Homo sapiens, a human being. Let's see if this will give them the opportunity to settle their differences and to reach a point of union, harmony and understanding between each other. Well, a short look around the world, quick scan, tells you that things haven't been going too smoothly, have they? No, we've got all sorts of things going on. So I'm going to go back into the time again and say this. When the men and the women from these two races, the Orions and the Sirians, were called upon by the Creator to seed beings into this planet, the females were dead happy about it. Yeah, great, we'll do that. We're into conflict resolution, we're into harmony between us and them. What about the men? Well, I guess you could expect that the answer of the men was going to be the same as any loser of a war that had had very unfair terms imposed upon them. They didn't want to know, they were not remotely interested, and they had to be persuaded, cajoled and coaxed into incarnating on this planet. And he was a rub, don't forget, no reproductive capacity, and that was going to be carried through onto this planet. So what we regard to be the norm, which is not at all normal, is that only the females carry the young, and the males impregnate the females, and that's kind of as much as they have to do biologically. Now, if we just step into our male pride a moment, guys, the way we've satisfied ourselves on this one for a long time now is generations, eons, we've said, well, look, we're so hard, we're so cool, we don't have to do that, so we let the women do that. And in fact, we so let the women do that when it comes to being a father and taking our father responsibilities, we'll be a bit cavalier about it. We might feel like it if we want to, we might not be asked, we'll just see how we go with it all. And that pretty much is a story that is played out all over the world today, with fathers not really being too bothered and the women shouldering responsibility. I am drawn straight away to Jamaica. In Jamaican society, they have the concept of the baby father and the baby mother. So two people get together, they have sex, they don't get married, they're not going to have any relationship as such, but they have sex and they produce a child. And so when they meet in the street, oh yeah, that's my baby mother, the man would say, pointing at the woman carrying his child. That's the way they describe it, because the father, in that culture, in the time I'm thinking of, had very little to do with the upbringing of the children. So we can start to see how some of these things are being played out. So this was the first example of the males from Orion choosing to incarnate as men on this planet, but doing it in a slightly grumpy fashion. Well, all right then, Creator, if you really insist we will, but we're not that enthusiastic about it. So that was the first thing, and that's because of sour grapes, so we're not being able to procreate, to actually carry your child to term. Yeah, tough on men, but of course you'd never admit it in 1,000 years. No, you think that's an inferior activity, of course, don't you? Except if you go really deep inside yourself, you realise it's a bit different from that, isn't it? Yeah. And I'm reminded of the advert that was on British billboards and TVs of a man pregnant with an expression on his face, and it moved all of us, didn't it, man? It caused all sorts of feelings to course through us, which we did not understand at the time at all. And I'm just dragging that for you. If you come from another country, it was a pretty far out advert of a guy obviously heavily pregnant with this really interesting expression on his face. Fascinating. Maybe you can find it if you look hard enough on the internet. So let's bring in the other subject, and let's get really nasty now, because the men demanded revenge. These were their terms to actually incarnate on this planet as men, these Orions. So they said, okay, we will do so on one condition, and the condition is we need to have a way to actually get our own back on the Sirians. And so the arrangement was made, and it's known by us all today as rape. And the only reason I'm actually bothering to go through all this with you is for one purpose and one purpose only. What I want to do by intention is to create increased understanding about the war between the sexes, the sex war that's going on all the time. So, rape as a tool of revenge exacted upon women by men. Yeah, pretty serious stuff, isn't it? And for those men that have partaken in this activity, they will know something that they'll be very ashamed to admit. And what they will be very, very ashamed to admit is that feeling of triumph they will have had in being able to conquer a woman in that way. It might make me feel sick, but that's actually what turns on the person that can actually do that act, the act of rape. Let's take it even further. An event scandalised and shocked people all over the world not so long ago, when a woman was trapped in a bus in India and was gang raped by a group of men using a metal implement and was very seriously injured. At this time, right now, There is a cult fashion going on in parts of Mexico. What happens is that gangs of men abduct women. They take them to a place where they are restrained. They are raped, tortured and murdered. Yeah, these things are going on. There's human trafficking, there's sex slavery, there are child soldiers in Africa for whom rape, if they're females, is completely part of their daily lives. There's prostitution. There's the phenomenon of the pimp. Men who take pleasure in this kind of activity. Men who take the earnings of a woman who is making money through sex. All these experiences, so extreme, so incomprehensible, until you put the bigger picture into perspective and see that these are people unconsciously acting out, not having any awareness of what they're doing at all, issues which go way, way back into the past. So far back that they don't concern us in our daily lives, except, as I'm saying, they do. I'm a contributor to this wonderful site called avaz.org, and I thoroughly recommend it because it keeps you in touch with the important things that go on in the news. And this image came through the most recent one of all, and you can see these young girls. They've been gang raped and they've been hung. It just shows you how serious this issue is. And the piece that I want to add to this film is as follows. Thank God for organisations like avaz.org that bring the awareness of the world to these issues, so that people take action, sign petitions, give money and do work to prevent this sort of thing from happening in the future. That's the only way that I can sleep at night, because I think something horrific like this happens, we get the response and we make the world a better place. And then I also want to link in the international justice movement, and this is an organisation, a charity that operates worldwide, and I met some of the people and I've made a film about it you've seen recently. This is all to do with connecting with people who are experiencing these terrible times and doing something to improve their lives on the practical grassroots, on the ground level. So what are we here for? We are here always for one reason. We are here as curious, interested human beings, and our job is to take negativity and to find ways to solve problems. And this is why I love the permaculture movement, because they created this axiom, and it's called "the problem is a solution." So the problem is that women are being disrespected all over the world. And the very first step towards this is to get some understanding that this is men acting out a grievance that they don't have any knowledge or awareness of in their conscious minds whatsoever. Now, understanding does not excuse, it does not pardon. On the contrary, it does exactly the opposite. It points the way and shows it's high time to step into behaviour about which you can feel decent in yourself. So if you're a man and you've abused women, it doesn't feel good, does it? It might feel good at the time, for a very short period of time, and then you've got a conscience, you've got a heart. That's when it eats away at the man for the period of time afterwards. These people that have done these things, they do not live happy lives. Even you've got to get to know one or two of them to realise that. So the punchline and the point of this film is to say that we have been incarnated as men and women into this planet, and we actually carry the genetics from Orion and Sirius, and we've got many things to do here. Our fundamental role is our curiosity, using our curiosity to invent new ways of doing things. Inventing new ways of doing things, we solve problems, and by solving problems we transform negativity. These are the gifts that we've got as human beings. We do have a destiny. I'm going to talk about it in another film. But the important point about the sex war is a truce is long overdue. It's time for women to respect men, and it's time for men to respect women. And let me just give you another much more day-to-day thing, which is says more and more men are being brought up by single parents. So again we have an even more intensification of the situation where the males, the Orions, are actually under the complete control of the females, the Sirians. If you're a young child, a young boy, and you're brought up and your mother is your primary influence in your life, if she's a bit cruel, mean and vindictive to you, can you imagine how that's going to work out when you become an adult male with power and responsibility? So it also cuts into this lifetime as well. So I really say with great emphasis that it's all about the women learning to respect the men and the men learning to respect the women, and coming to that point of truce, which then enables the space of love to be opened between the man and the woman. And then, as we've seen with the Jamie and Janet story, anything and everything is possible. These two people go on to create miraculous developments in their lives, touching, moving, and inspiring all those that they come in contact with. This is what it's all about. The sex war is lay down our arms, open our hearts, and become the miraculous beings we were always destined to be. Forgive your mother if she gave you a hard time. Forgive your father if he gave you a hard time. It's all part of our miraculous human journey into full understanding of who we are. So I want to conclude by saying that knowledge is primarily a male quality, understanding is primarily a female quality. You put knowledge and understanding together and you get wisdom. And that's what it's all about. So let's have more love in the world. Let us be a stand for being loving. And a final note to fathers. Yeah, let's get heavy. Fathers, if there's a child, and that child is your son or daughter, make the extra effort. Go the extra mile. See what you can do to father your child. And if your child happens to be a son, be aware of the fact that you are contributing that male quality, which is so important for him to grow up into actually who he is, his true destiny, a man. Girls being brought up by women, it's all sorted. The boys being brought up by women, they need all the help that they can get to understand who a man is. What is a man? What does a man do? Yeah, all these questions need to be answered by the men in the lives of these boys. So even if you're not a boy's father, if you happen to know of a boy being brought up by a woman, when you get on well with them, you can take the father role on as well. And much love and much respect to you too. And a big respect to Jamie for fathering Janet's son. And I want to say a huge thank you to my mother and my father. I watched them when I was a young child enacting this sex war. And I want to thank them both for their contribution to my life, for the stability that they gave me and the love that they gave me. I want to thank my children too for giving me the gift of being able to be their parent to the extent that I was capable of being. It's all about the love. Much love everybody.